Hello. So, growing up, I was obsessed with facts. I could state the content of the theobromine in a chocolate bar or the weight of the world's largest commercially sold cheeseburger. And like that cheeseburger, I devoured every line of every world records book, line by line. And line by line, I devoured every line of the world records books. So whenever a new edition came out at the library, you know I was unstoppable. Library card in hand and rolly backpack in tow, or rather, over the toes of my less than ecstatic classmates. Yeah. This is another thing that has to do with autism. You can't really tune out a lot of the sounds and bright lights and things going on with overstimulation. So this is a good example of that and a good leading into this. So all I wanted as a kid was to be one of those brainiacs in the movies that had that one piece of knowledge their team needed to save the world just in time. If I could do that, everyone would love me for being a hero. No more being ignored. I'd be taken seriously. But I had one problem. I didn't have a team. Heck, it was hard enough trying to make friends. And how could I know so much, yet so little? I felt stupid, and I told myself that day after day. Fast forward to high school, and I found my answer. I have Asperger's, which is a mild form of autism that makes it hard to understand the nuances of social interaction. That can make it hard to know social cues and make friends. And while they made my life easier at home, when I stepped in the classroom, I still felt like an outsider. But that changed in college, when I met friends that would listen when I told them about the origin of the teddy bear or the history of puns. They even stepped up the nerdiness and found my information very interesting. I'm so glad you guys laughed there. And even if they weren't on the spectrum, they knew what it felt like to be different. And because of that, they gave me the courage to look back at myself in the past, not with bitterness, but with compassion for the lonely, confused, and quirky kid that I was. And so I was okay. I finally felt like I had a team, that I could be that movie brainiac. But not so that people would love me and see me as a hero, but for kids like I was, for them to love themselves and see themselves as heroes. And that's why I started my venture, Social Cipher. My team and I work to create a video game that gives kids with autism a safe and accessible, judgment-free space to practice their social skills, with characters that represent and understand them. And with every child and young adult that we work with, I see myself in them. And it feels like a superpower when I can really relate to what they're going through. And through that powerful connection that I have with them makes going through life as an autistic entrepreneur worth it. And there are a lot of obstacles that come along with that, especially the stereotypes of autism that are still very much here in our society today. I mean, just a few weeks ago, I was at a pitch competition in Santa Monica, and after my entire pitch of Social Cipher, the only question, or if you could even call it that, in the question and answer round was these judges just saying, "Oh, but you don't look autistic." Now, there's no look to autism. And if I could just charge $1 for every time that someone told me, "Oh, but you don't look autistic," I probably would have raised my seed round in no time at all. So there's no look to autism. We're not these robots that aren't capable of connecting with people. We're not all savants that dislike people. We're just humans, and we just may connect differently, but we feel all the same. And so when they told me that I don't look autistic, it was an indicator that I wasn't breaking any type of stereotype. I was just becoming an exception to it. And that brought me back to the feelings of my childhood, where I felt misunderstood. I didn't feel heard. So maybe that's why when they told me I didn't look autistic, I didn't speak up. Instead, I said the worst thing I could have said, which was, "Thank you." And that was because if they didn't change their mind about autism after my whole pitch, then they would probably change their mind about me real quick if I made any type of social slip up. And so I stayed quiet and I played it safe. And I would do the same in networking events. I would do what I was told and work the room, even though it made me highly uncomfortable. And just like what happened in the beginning there, the same thing would happen in those networking events. When I told people that I was autistic, I thought in the back of my mind that there was some part of them that was just waiting for me to slip up socially. So I would monitor my behavior meticulously. I would measure all of my eye contact durations down to the second. And then at the same time, I was making sure I wasn't getting overwhelmed by any type of the overloading factors in the room. And so that made it pretty dang hard. So, and on top of all that, I had to just cover it up with this pleasant and enthusiastic smile. And for a show of hands, how many of you have felt like you had to mask how you feel at some point? Okay, yeah, I thought so. So from the show of hands here, it's clear to me that I'm not alone. And it's also clear to me that the world of work needs a place where we can make deep connections and vulnerabilities accessible and acceptable. We need quiet spaces so that everyone can feel comfortable to feel heard and to let people listen. Only 15% of autistic college graduates are employed right now. And it's no wonder when the business world has the customs and values that it does. We're in this noisy business world where everyone has to raise their voices over each other to be heard. And so a lot of us in reaction will do what I used to do as a kid. We'll just put our heads down and focus on our facts the whole time, just waiting for a space to be able to show people what we know. But we can only do that if you give us the support and attention to do so. So a lot of employers and coworkers are nervous about that. They don't know where to start. And honestly, we just want to be treated like anyone else. We just wanted to be listened to, and that's all we need. So maybe by listening to the quieter people in the room, you'll be able to find the information that your team needs just in time to change the world. Thank you.